Do not scroll past this message casually, because what is unfolding today is not ordinary energy, and deep down you already know that. There is a reason your thoughts have felt louder than usual lately. There is a reason your emotions have been harder to organize, harder to explain, harder to silence. Most people are going to move through this Saturday completely disconnected from what is actually happening beneath the surface of reality. They will treat today like any other weekend, never realizing that the universe is placing a set of answers directly in front of them. But you were pulled here for a different reason. Because on May 23rd, 2026, the moon enters Virgo. And the second that shift happens, the atmosphere around your life changes. Not slowly, not over time, but immediately. The mental clutter that has been swallowing your focus, the exhaustion that has made every decision feel heavier than it should, the invisible emotional weight you have been dragging from one day to the next, suddenly meets an energy capable of cutting through all of it. This is not one of those moments where the universe asks you to sit still and wait for destiny to arrive at your door. This energy demands participation. It demands movement. It demands that you finally stop circling around your own potential and begin doing something real with it. Virgo energy is not fantasy. It is precision. It is structure. It is the moment your soul becomes tired of confusion and decides it cannot survive another day living in chaos. And if your mind has been splitting itself into 1,000 unfinished thoughts lately, if you feel like you are constantly busy but somehow accomplishing nothing meaningful, there is a very specific reason for that. And once you understand it, you will never look at this past week the same way again, because the emotional and mental pressure building around you has not been accidental. It has been intentional. A cosmic pressure chamber has been forming all week long, pushing your nervous system, exposing your weak points, amplifying every distraction, every unresolved emotion, every hidden crack in your foundation. All so that when the moon crossed into Virgo this morning, you would finally be forced to see what can no longer continue the way it has been. What you have been feeling is real. That strange sense that your body is moving through ordinary life, while your mind is operating at an entirely different speed. Thoughts arriving faster than you can process them. Conversations leaving you overstimulated instead of understood. A constant inner restlessness that makes silence uncomfortable and stillness almost impossible. You try to focus, but your attention fractures instantly. You begin one thing, then another idea pulls you away before you can finish. It feels chaotic, almost electric, like your brain has been plugged into something too powerful to regulate. This is not you failing. This is Uranus in Gemini, activating exactly as it was meant to. Uranus is the archetype of disruption, awakening, rebellion, and radical breakthroughs, and it only recently stepped into Gemini on April 25th. This planetary movement has not occurred since the 1940s, and when Uranus travels through the sign connected to communication, cognition, information, and thought patterns, humanity enters a period where the mind itself becomes revolutionized. But this week, that energy intensified dramatically. Yesterday morning, on May 22nd at 10:30, the Sun aligned exactly with Uranus at 1 degree and 30 minutes Gemini. This alignment, known as a Kazimi, acts like a direct beam of cosmic electricity entering human consciousness. It accelerates insight. It breaks mental patterns apart. It creates shocking realizations that arrive without warning. Suddenly you understand things that confused you for years. Suddenly your perspective changes in an instant. But there is another side to this energy that most people never talk about. The nervous system can become overloaded. Your mind begins firing too many signals at once. Inspiration floods in faster than your body can ground it. And that is exactly why you have felt so mentally scattered lately. You are trying to process an enormous amount of energetic information without the proper structure to hold it. Simple responsibilities suddenly feel impossible, while your mind races toward massive ideas, life changes, breakthroughs, and realizations you are not yet sure how to apply. Most people will experience this and miss the lesson completely. They will call it stress, anxiety, distraction, burnout. But today changes the equation because the moon entering Virgo introduces the antidote to the storm. And the mental chaos is only one layer of what has been happening to you. Emotionally, something even more disorienting has been unfolding underneath the surface. Early yesterday morning at 2:30, Venus in Cancer formed a difficult square with Neptune in Aries. This is the kind of transit that quietly distorts emotional reality. Venus in Cancer craves emotional security, familiarity, closeness, and comfort. It wants to feel protected inside relationships and emotional bonds. But Neptune in Aries dissolves clarity. It creates projection, fantasy, emotional confusion, and false narratives that feel real while you are trapped inside them. The square between these two forces creates internal conflict, and many people do not even recognize it while it is happening. Boundaries weaken. Emotions become harder to separate from the emotions of others. You begin carrying energy that does not belong to you. You may find yourself emotionally attached to possibilities instead of realities, holding on to connections that exhaust you because you are more in love with who someone could become than who they truly are. This transit creates emotional fog so thick that people lose touch with their own instincts. It becomes difficult to tell the difference between intuition and wishful thinking. You convince yourself that confusion is love, that emotional exhaustion is loyalty, that waiting endlessly for someone to change somehow proves the depth of your heart. And the dangerous part is that while this is happening, it feels convincing. It feels emotionally real. That is what Neptune does. It blurs the edges of truth until you no longer know where your emotions end and someone else begins. But today, the entrance of the moon into Virgo cuts directly through that illusion, because Virgo energy does not romanticize dysfunction. Virgo sees details clearly. Virgo notices patterns people try to ignore. Virgo restores order where emotions have become distorted. This energy helps you rebuild the boundaries you lost while trying to save people who were draining you. It helps you separate fantasy from reality. It helps you recognize where your energy has been leaking, where your focus has been scattered, where your emotional confusion has been silently consuming your life. And what you need to understand now is that none of the chaos from the past several days was meaningless. The overwhelm, the confusion, the emotional exhaustion, the mental overstimulation, all of it served a purpose. The universe was not punishing you. It was exposing the areas of your life that can no longer survive in disorder. Because before something can be repaired, it has to become visible. Before your life can be reorganized, the hidden chaos has to rise to the surface first. You cannot transform a pattern you refuse to acknowledge. And that is exactly why the universe allowed the pressure to intensify over the past several days. It was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to expose you to yourself. Every delay, every emotional overload, every unfinished responsibility piling up around you, every moment where your mind felt too loud to control, all of it was designed to force hidden dysfunction into the light. Because as long as chaos stays invisible, you keep adapting to it. You normalize exhaustion. You normalize confusion. You convince yourself that surviving in disorder is just part of life. But now the cracks are impossible to ignore, and today changes everything because the moon in Virgo does not stare at problems helplessly. Virgo analyzes. Virgo repairs. Virgo identifies what is inefficient, what is draining your energy, what no longer serves a purpose, and then begins rebuilding your life piece by piece with surgical precision. And today, that energy is arriving with 3 very specific answers to 3 very specific forms of stagnation that have been quietly controlling your life. But before those solutions can fully activate, There is something critical you need to understand about the energy shaping this day, because the moon does not simply enter Virgo peacefully and settle there. The moment it arrives, it immediately collides with the sun in Gemini through a tense square at 7 o'clock in the morning. This creates what astrologers call a first quarter moon, and this phase is never passive. It is a pressure point. It creates movement through friction. It pushes people into action whether they feel ready or not. This energy does not tolerate endless contemplation. It does not reward hesitation. The sun in Gemini multiplies possibilities endlessly. It floods the mind with options, ideas, conversations, distractions, and potential directions. But the Virgo moon responds with one message only: choose something and commit to it fully. That internal conflict creates enormous tension, but that tension is exactly what breaks paralysis. Because right now, what has been keeping you trapped is not a lack of intelligence. It is an excess of scattered mental energy with nowhere stable to land. Remember the restless feeling that has been following you lately. The inability to concentrate on one thing for very long. The sensation that your mind keeps jumping from thought to thought, project to project, possibility to possibility, without ever fully grounding into action. You may have blamed yourself for that. You may have wondered if you lost discipline, lost motivation, lost direction. But this was never about failure. There is a precise astrological reason your mind has been operating this way. Mercury, the ruler of both Gemini and Virgo, entered its home sign of Gemini on May 17th. When Mercury moves through Gemini, mental activity accelerates dramatically. Thoughts become faster. Conversations intensify. Information flows continuously. The mind becomes hyperactive, curious, overstimulated, and difficult to quiet. Then Uranus amplified that energy even further, turning your nervous system into something that has felt almost electrically charged all week long. But there was another shift yesterday that changes how all of this energy functions. At 2 in the afternoon, Mercury formed a supportive sextile with Saturn in Aries. And this aspect matters more than most people realize, because Saturn introduces something your mind has been missing: structure. Saturn creates discipline. Saturn creates focus. Saturn slows things down just enough for you to build something real instead of drowning in possibilities. It is the architect of the zodiac. It takes scattered concepts and gives them form. It transforms inspiration into execution. And because Mercury rules today Virgo Moon, this connection to Saturn means the systems, habits, and solutions you begin implementing today are not superficial adjustments. They are foundational changes capable of reshaping your life long term. Suddenly, all the mental chaos from the past week begins making sense. Your brain was not malfunctioning. It was collecting raw material. It was downloading insight faster than you knew how to organize it. And today, the Virgo moon gives you the ability to sort through all of it with clarity. But the first place this energy is going to reveal itself is not inside your thoughts. It is inside your physical environment. Be honest with yourself for a moment. Look around your space right now. Look at your desk, your room, your inbox, your unfinished tasks, the clutter you keep promising yourself you will deal with later. Look at the routines that have slowly collapsed over the past several weeks. The mental chaos created by the Sun-Uranus conjunction did not stay confined inside your mind. It spread outward into your physical world. Because when your thoughts become fragmented, your environment eventually reflects that fragmentation. Small messes grow into overwhelming disorder. Unfinished responsibilities begin draining energy every time you see them. Daily systems stop functioning properly. The physical chaos around you quietly reinforces the emotional chaos inside you. And before long, you become trapped in a cycle where your environment feeds your anxiety, while your anxiety prevents you from fixing your environment. This is the first major problem the Virgo moon arrives to solve today. environmental disorder, and the collapse of functional routines. When the moon enters Virgo this morning, something emotional shifts instantly. The clutter you tolerated yesterday suddenly feels unbearable. The disorganization you kept ignoring becomes emotionally loud. You begin noticing every inefficiency, every unfinished detail, every neglected responsibility with almost painful clarity. But unlike the exhausted energy you have been carrying recently, today also provides the motivation required to actually change it. Virgo energy finds emotional relief through order. It experiences satisfaction through systems, structure, refinement, and practical improvement. And under this first quarter moon, the desire to organize becomes impossible to suppress. You will not simply think about cleaning your space today, you will feel compelled to do it. There is an almost instinctive biological urge attached to this energy, a need to sort, clear, file, reset, simplify, and restore functionality to your environment. But what makes this energy different from ordinary bursts of motivation is that Virgo does not organize for appearances alone. Virgo organizes to create support. This is not about making your life look aesthetically perfect. It is about building systems that stop draining your energy every single day. Today is about recognizing that your environment is either reinforcing your stability or sabotaging it. And for the first time in a long time, you are finally able to see clearly enough to change it. The systems you begin creating today are not random acts of productivity. They are mechanisms designed to remove resistance from your life. They are structures that allow your energy to move without constantly colliding with chaos. And that is why the urge you feel today to reorganize your environment, rebuild your routines, clear out neglected responsibilities, or finally confront the disorder you have been tolerating should not be ignored. That impulse is not ordinary motivation. It is the universe attempting to restore alignment between your inner world and your external reality. When you suddenly feel compelled to reset your workspace, clean out your inbox, create a healthier schedule, or simplify your surroundings, something deeper is happening beneath the surface. Your nervous system is trying to stabilize itself through order. Your spirit is trying to create conditions where your energy can finally flow again, instead of constantly leaking into distraction, overwhelm, and unfinished obligations. Let yourself participate in that process today, because the second major issue this Virgo moon arrives to confront is even more emotionally exhausting than physical disorganization. It is the paralysis that comes from too many possibilities and not enough clarity. You have known for a long time that you are capable of more than the life you are currently living. That is not the problem. The problem is that your mind has been flooded with so many ideas, so many potential directions, so many alternate versions of your future that you became unable to move toward any of them. The Gemini energy intensified this dramatically. It expanded your awareness of possibility until every path seemed available at once. One moment you feel called toward one vision for your future, and the next moment another idea appears that feels equally compelling. Suddenly, there are 10 possible careers, 20 possible strategies, endless opportunities, endless decisions, endless uncertainty. And when the human mind is presented with too many choices at the same time, it often does not become empowered. It becomes frozen. This is what the astrological pattern describes as analytical paralysis. You have been standing at an energetic crossroads trying to calculate the perfect decision before taking action, terrified that one wrong choice could permanently derail your future. And underneath that fear is something even deeper. Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, which stationed on May 6th, has been restructuring your relationship to work, ambition, identity, and long-term purpose at the deepest level possible. The systems you once relied on no longer feel stable. Old definitions of success no longer resonate the same way. The professional structures you built your identity around are transforming internally, even if your external life has not fully caught up yet. And because the new direction has not completely revealed itself, You have been trapped in limbo, not fully connected to the past anymore, but unable to clearly see the future either. That emotional uncertainty creates hesitation. You delay decisions because you want guarantees. You overthink because you are trying to eliminate risk completely. But today, the Virgo moon cuts directly through that mental fog with almost surgical precision. Virgo does not waste energy obsessing over every possible outcome. It does not demand certainty before movement. Instead, it asks one simple question that changes everything. What is the next practical step? Not the entire 5-year plan, not the final outcome, not the complete map of your future. Just the next real action directly in front of you. And this is where your breakthrough begins today, because overwhelming problems stop feeling overwhelming the moment they are broken into smaller, manageable pieces. Virgo energy understands something most people forget. Massive transformations are not built through dramatic moments alone. They are built through consistent execution. One task completed carefully. One responsibility handled properly. One disciplined decision repeated enough times to create momentum. Today you may notice that something which felt impossibly complicated yesterday suddenly becomes easier to approach. The career move you kept postponing begins separating itself into clear stages. The decision you have been emotionally wrestling with becomes simpler once you stop demanding total certainty and focus only on what needs to happen immediately. And because Mercury is receiving stabilizing support from Saturn, the actions you take today are not meaningless distractions designed to make you feel temporarily productive. They are structural. They are foundational. They begin creating something durable beneath your life. Saturn rewards commitment, consistency, mastery, and discipline, which means the systems and efforts you establish now are capable of developing into long-term authority, expertise, and stability over time. But the most important shift happening today is psychological. Virgo energy is not obsessed with appearing successful. It is obsessed with being useful. And that distinction matters more than you realize. So much of modern ambition is driven by image, validation, comparison, and ego. People become consumed with looking impressive while secretly feeling disconnected from meaning. But Virgo redirects your focus toward contribution. Today, instead of obsessing over how to appear important, ask yourself a different question. What actually helps? What solves a real problem? What creates genuine value for yourself and others? The moment you shift your focus towards service instead of performance, paralysis begins dissolving naturally, because purpose becomes clearer when it is rooted in usefulness rather than perfection. And underneath all of this, there is a third issue. The Virgo moon is desperately trying to heal inside you, and it may be the most dangerous one because it often goes unnoticed for too long. Over the past week, your consciousness has been pulled almost entirely into the mental realm. Between the Uranian overstimulation, the Gemini acceleration, and the emotional distortion created by Venus square Neptune, you have been living almost completely inside your thoughts. Your body has been trying to communicate with you the entire time, but you have not been listening. Sleep patterns have become unstable, eating habits inconsistent, your nervous system overstimulated. You have ignored exhaustion, suppressed stress signals, disconnected from physical rhythms, and convinced yourself you could continue functioning purely through mental force. But the human body does not operate that way forever. Eventually, disconnection creates consequences. The more detached you become from your physical state, the more anxiety begins amplifying itself internally. Your thoughts race faster because your nervous system has lost grounding. And then, in response to that anxiety, you retreat even deeper into your mind, searching for answers, creating a cycle that becomes increasingly difficult to escape. This is where the Virgo moon becomes profoundly healing, because Virgo rules the relationship between mind and body in medical astrology. It governs digestion, regulation, routines, purification, and the systems that maintain physical balance. When the moon enters Virgo, there is a powerful instinctive desire to restore order within the body itself. Suddenly, you become more aware of what you are consuming physically and emotionally. You notice how certain foods affect your energy. You recognize how exhaustion changes your emotional state. You feel drawn toward healthier rhythms, not because someone forced you to care, but because your body finally becomes loud enough to hear again. This is not about becoming extreme or obsessively perfect overnight. Virgo is not asking for impossible standards today. It is asking for reconnection to the basics: regular sleep, consistent nourishment, movement, hydration, simplicity. Predictable rhythms that calm your nervous system and remind your body that it is safe again. And perhaps the most important gift Virgo offers today is emotional grounding through observation instead of emotional drowning. While Venus square Neptune has been pulling people into confusion, projection, fantasy, and emotional overwhelm, Virgo provides another path entirely. It says, stop spiraling inside feelings long enough to observe what is actually happening. Step outside the emotional storm for a moment and analyze the pattern. What triggered this reaction? What emotional need is not being met? What does your body require right now in order to stabilize? This is not emotional coldness. It is emotional intelligence. It is transforming overwhelming feelings into information that can actually be understood and worked with. And today, when anxiety begins rising again, you may notice something different happening inside you. Instead of instantly collapsing into emotional chaos, there is a growing ability to pause, step back, recognize the pattern, and ask yourself what your mind and body are truly trying to communicate before the spiral takes control again. And the moment you recognize what your body or emotions are asking for, the most important part begins. You respond to it with action grounded in reality. You make the tea instead of continuing to spiral through anxious thoughts. You step outside for the walk instead of sitting motionless inside overstimulation. You finally clean the closet, organize the corner of your room, clear the desk, answer the messages, reset the routine. And what you need to understand is that these actions are not avoidance. They are not meaningless distractions keeping you busy. They are forms of nervous system regulation. They are the physical language through which the body reestablishes safety. Every practical action you take today becomes a signal to your mind that chaos is no longer in control. That is the hidden medicine of Virgo energy. It restores presence through small acts of order. But there is something else you absolutely need to know before moving through this energy, because the Virgo moon does not arrive carrying only healing. It also carries a shadow, and if you are not conscious of it, you could accidentally turn today progress into another form of self-punishment. The shadow of Virgo is perfectionism. Not healthy improvement, but the kind of perfectionism that quietly destroys momentum by convincing you that nothing you do is ever enough. Virgo notices details with extraordinary precision, but when that awareness becomes distorted, it can become merciless. Suddenly, every flaw feels magnified. Every unfinished task feels like failure. Every mistake becomes proof that you are falling behind. And when that critical energy turns inward toward yourself, it can become emotionally brutal without you even realizing it. So today, while you are trying to rebuild systems, restore order, and regain stability, there is a real danger of slipping into the trap of demanding perfection too quickly. You may begin organizing your environment and suddenly feel overwhelmed because everything is not fixed immediately. You may take one meaningful step toward a career goal, only to criticize yourself for not being further ahead already. You may establish one healthier habit, then attack yourself emotionally the first moment you fail to maintain it flawlessly. Do not let that happen today. Remember the deeper meaning of this first quarter moon. The square between the sun and moon means Tension is built directly into the energy itself. Friction is not evidence that you are failing. Resistance is part of the process. You are not supposed to glide effortlessly into transformation overnight. You are supposed to encounter discomfort. That discomfort is what creates movement. It is what generates momentum. The purpose of today is not perfection. It is progress. Slow progress, imperfect progress, human progress. The Virgo Moon is offering you tools for repair, but those tools must be used with compassion instead of self-cruelty. Begin smaller than your ego wants to. Organize one drawer instead of trying to reinvent your entire life in one afternoon. Take one concrete step toward your future instead of obsessively mapping out every detail of the next 5 years. Commit to one nourishing routine instead of demanding total transformation from yourself overnight. Because real lasting change is never built through emotional extremes that collapse after 3 exhausting days. It is built through repetition. Tiny actions repeated consistently until they become identity. That is the secret most people miss. And there is another astrological layer unfolding today that intensifies everything emotionally in ways you need to stay aware of. At 10:30 this morning, only a few hours after the moon enters Virgo, Venus in Cancer forms a quincunx to Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. This aspect introduces emotional intensity that can feel deeply uncomfortable if you are unprepared for it. A quincunx is a 150-degree angle between two signs that struggle to understand one another completely. Venus in Cancer seeks closeness, emotional reassurance, loyalty, familiarity, and safety inside connection. Pluto retrograde in Aquarius demands transformation, detachment, truth, and the exposure of unhealthy power dynamics. These energies pull in completely different directions. And because of that tension, buried relationship patterns can suddenly rise to the surface today with startling clarity. You may begin noticing subtle manipulation where you previously ignored it. You may recognize unspoken expectations that have been quietly controlling your emotional decisions. You may suddenly realize how much energy you have spent trying to maintain peace at the expense of your own needs. Some people will recognize that they have been gripping too tightly to situations that are already asking to be released. Others may realize they have been surrendering their power in exchange for emotional security. This energy can easily pull someone into obsessive emotional analysis, anxiety, and relationship power struggles if they are not grounded enough to handle it consciously. But once again, the Virgo moon becomes the stabilizing force that changes how this energy is experienced. Instead of getting trapped inside emotional intensity, Virgo redirects attention toward practical demonstration. It asks you to ground love through action instead of emotional drama. So today, if you are in a healthy relationship, channel this energy into tangible acts of care. Solve a practical problem together. Create stability. Organize something shared. Make someone's life easier through effort, consistency, and reliability rather than dramatic emotional declarations. Virgo understands that devotion is most powerful when it becomes visible through daily action. It proves loyalty through presence, through consistency, through practical support that strengthens trust without manipulation. But there is an important warning attached to this energy as well. Do not confuse self-sacrifice with love. Virgo shadow can sometimes create martyrdom, the exhausting belief that if you work hard enough, fix enough, help enough, or give enough of yourself away, you can save relationships that are fundamentally unhealthy. That is not what today is asking you to do. If a connection is genuinely toxic at its foundation, no amount of acts of service will transform it into something emotionally safe. And the Virgo moon will help you recognize that truth clearly today if you are willing to see it honestly. Trust what becomes visible. Trust what your intuition quietly reveals beneath the emotional noise. Because what happens today reaches much further into the future than most people realize. Astrological transits like this are not isolated moments that disappear the second the day ends. They are beginnings. They are energetic seeds planted into your life through action. The routines you establish today, the systems you create, the clarity you gain, the decisions you finally make, all of these things create momentum that continues unfolding long after this transit passes. And because Mercury, the ruler of this Virgo moon, is receiving stabilizing support from Saturn, the changes you begin implementing now are not fragile temporary solutions. They are structural reinforcements. They are capable of becoming permanent improvements that support your life for months or even years ahead. The morning routine you commit to today may become the foundation that stabilizes your mental health long term. The organizational system you create today may completely transform your productivity and focus. The career decision you finally stop postponing may become the exact turning point you eventually look back on as the moment your life changed direction completely. But none of it happens passively. The universe is not reorganizing your life for you, it is reorganizing your life through you. You are the one who must move. You are the one who must pick up the tools. You are the one who must take the action. The Virgo moon simply removes enough resistance for you to finally follow through. It provides clarity where there was confusion. It creates focus where there was distraction. It offers patience where there was overwhelm. So when you feel that powerful urge today to clean, organize, simplify, plan, regulate, or finally take that practical next step you have been postponing, do not dismiss it as ordinary productivity. Something much deeper is happening. The universe is attempting to restore order inside your life from the inside outward. Today is a reset point, a threshold. The chaos of this past week exposed what was unsustainable. The overstimulated mind, the emotional confusion, the physical exhaustion, the collapsing systems, all of it rose to the surface for a reason. And now today arrives carrying the tools necessary to rebuild. The Virgo moon gives you precision, discernment, focus, and the ability to separate overwhelming problems into manageable pieces. The first quarter square pushes you into movement instead of endless contemplation. Saturn stabilizes your efforts, so what you build has durability instead of collapsing under pressure. But your only responsibility right now is to begin, not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly. One step at a time, even when your mind keeps trying to jump 10 steps ahead. Because today environmental chaos can become structure, career paralysis can become movement, emotional and physical disconnection can become grounded integration. 3 problems, 3 solutions. One day capable of shifting the trajectory of your life if you choose to work with it consciously. And if you are still here listening to these words, then perhaps some part of you already recognizes that this moment was meant to find you. Thank you for spending this time here. If this message resonated with you and you want to continue exploring these energies together, consider subscribing so you do not miss what comes next. And if something inside this message reflected your own experience, share it below, because your story may be the exact confirmation someone else needs today. Until next time, take care of yourself, stay grounded, and keep moving forward one intentional step at a time.